Many people think I'm a communist. Communist has armies, navies, money, politics, social stratification. We don't have any of those things. We have nothing in common with any organization today.
And communism is for the working class. But today, if you gave the working class a little bit more money, then you pay for that with the cost of the car. They raise the cost of the car. So that might be good for the working class, but it's not good for everybody else. So there's no way of segmenting or making this system just or equitable. We have to make a system that assures human rights. You know, when everybody has free access to goods and services, you don't have to fight for women's rights or black rights. It's an automatic in a society that's set up that way. You don't have to make laws, don't steal. You don't have any opportunity to steal. You have things. You don't have to steal or hoard or be greedy. It would bypass that behavior.
Or take a watch that costs $150. A guy steals that. His third crime. $150 watch, they put him in jail for 4 years, third time. That's 1,000 watches. Give him a watch, it's cheaper. Always support people. When you put them in jail for 10 years or life, you spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why not send them to school? Putting them in jail does nothing.
They don't come out any smarter in jail. They just learn how to be more of a criminal in jail. That's what you learn. In this system, you have something to gain by control and positions of advantage and greed. Everybody has to take care of themselves in this system. Even if you have ideals, by the time you get married and you have to pay off your car and you have to pay off your house and you have to send your kids to school, it's to your advantage to be greedy and outsmart the other guy even if you have a worse product. So there's no advantage to everybody in this system. If you have a system that learns how to cooperate with one another, for instance, if you took all the people who design cars who are competing with each other today and designed the best car that we could, then that's to the advantage of everyone, although we don't feel cars would make it into the future, but a better transportation system. So in the future, there would be no reward for the behavior of control. You'd be looked at as being ill and sent back to have a better education. There's no need to do that.
Depends. When I speak to 500 people in a different country, I always say, they all like it, by the way. I say, if you do nothing when you leave here, nothing will happen. I have no power. Roxanne has no power. It depends on how many people can identify with this, how soon it'll come. It would take 10 years to change the surface of the earth. That's all. If you get away from hand tool. Did you ever see the memory metals on our show? There are metals that remember. Are you familiar with that?
I have heard about it.
Nickel and titanium. It's called shape memory alloys. We take strands of that metal, put it in a building, and make a dome. Then we flatten it out, ship 10,000 houses flat to India. When you get there, connect 2 electrodes. Takes a minute and a half. Boom, you got a house. Well, if you try to ship a house, you take up too much room. Take a container ship. They take off 1 container at a time. That ship cost $1 billion, tied up 3 days. So we float the whole container section off the ship. It's just a front and back. You understand? Like things that you have millions of cars sitting in front of factories for 8 hours. In the future, you don't own anything. They're there for your use. When people come out of the factory, they take the cars. You don't have freight trains and freight yards where you say, I hope next month's business is good enough to use all those freight trains. You have a lot of empty trucks. Very inefficient. The system wastes resources all over the world, particularly armies and navies. You can't use them for anything else.
We ask you to look at www.thevenusproject.com. It's a very visual website, too. It doesn't just talk about the future, but it shows city systems, transportation, alternative sources of energy, new types of automobiles. And Jacque has been not just an artist, not just somebody who talks, and not just a philosopher about the future. He changed people. He worked with people to figure out how to change people's behavior. You can't just build a city and bring the same people in with the same values. He worked technically as to what the future could be like. His architecture is not just an architecture to his own ego, but it's social architecture to show how you can build total city systems that are efficient, clean, and produce abundance for people. That's criteria, among other things. So it's a totally different way of thinking, totally different way of building, if we want to make it into the future at all.
It wouldn't take long. No, I'm not interested in anything 500 years from now. I'm interested in the next 5, 10 years. So our system could have been applied in 1927. We could have made the earth a beautiful garden. All our cities, they have no parks. The whole city is a park, beautiful trees, lakes, waterfalls. We don't even know the fantastic things the future will produce. It's going to be so fantastic that today the middle-class Americans live better than kings. They have cell phones, television in their car, air conditioning. No king ever had that. But if you ever turn science loose, give labs whatever the hell they need instead of nickels and dimes for heart disease. You understand? You use the polar regions to store surplus food, the North and South Pole. Dehydrate it so you get more food. So if there's an earthquake in Japan, you don't go to school and say, give us a can of beans or a box of oatmeal. You have access immediately and you can solve those problems.
So even the wealthiest of today would have a much higher standard of living within a resource-based economy.
It's not for poor handouts so they just live. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a very rich economy for everyone. We do have more than enough resources.